All right, good afternoon, everyone. Please confirm you can hear me.
Good afternoon. Yes, we can hear you.
All right, thanks, Tinelo. Let's just give some time for more people to join the call. All right, good evening once again. Um, we're about we're close to 40 on the call already, and we're 2 minutes in. Trust everyone is doing well. You've had an eventful weekend. How is everyone? If I can just get feedback from some people. How has your weekend been?
Very well, thank you. And yours?
It was great. Thanks, Jenny. Thanks for the response. Anyone else?
Yeah, it was great. Back-to-back activities to thank God. Hope
Very
yours too.
eventful. I understand the back-to-back activities. It is well. Thanks, Philip. Anyone else?
A very short weekend. Uh, yeah, and thank you.
Thank
Just two
you.
is going on great too as well.
You said? Sorry, I didn't catch the last thing you said.
I think yours is great, going on great too as well.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Thanks a lot, Ruth. I just need
Yeah,
to sleep after this training. But yes, it's fine. It's been
very.
eventful. We'll take two more people and yeah, we'll get started afterwards. Anyone else? How has the weekend been? It has been an activity full past few weeks for testers. And I hope if not everyone, most of the people on this call have benefited from the different trainings, workshops, and seminars that have been hosted in the past few weeks. The weekend is weekending. All right, Daria, I see your comments, but it's been a great one. I would say it's been a very eventful past few weeks for we testers, and I'm very optimistic that in the coming weeks and days we'll put to practice all we've learned from the summit to the training that happened yesterday also, and now we're here. For those in the ANST training already, I'm sure you guys already, your brain already has added enough muscles because um they've been on an intensive training since mid-January. Some of them are just rounding up a programming language class and joining this call. So it's been a very intense learning journey for them. So I salute you guys. I'm giving you your flowers. You guys are the definition of resilience. All right, so yeah, enough talk. Welcome once again to everyone on the call. I don't know if there's anyone who this is your first ANST training. If there's anyone in that bucket, you can just use an emoji or raise your hand so that we welcome you. All right, that's Ruth. Ruth, you're very welcome. Welcome to ANST's your first ANSC training. Welcome, Victoria. All right, all right. You're all welcome. And happy International Women's Day. We are still in the International Women's Month. So men, pardon us if we are greeting each other too much this month. Okay. So happy International Women's Day. And welcome once again. ANSC is the parent body for it represents the Association of Nigerian Software Testers. We're a growing community of software testers. We've been on for several years. And this training is just hosted by one of the arms of the association, which is the Professional Training and Development arm of the association. So if you are not yet a member of the ANST, I'll be dropping a link in the channel so that you can fill the form. It will be reviewed afterwards by the Directorate for Membership, and you'll be added to the respective groups for all members. So once again, you're all welcome. All right, so without spending so much time, I would introduce our guest for today. Sorry, give me a minute to make him I think I saw him on the call earlier on, just to make him a co-host. Okay, 1 minute, please. All right, so we have on the call today, or we have all of you on the call, right? But we have as a special guest today, Oluwaseyi Ajadi. I hope I did not murder your name. I really do. He's a software quality assurance engineer and also a penetration tester. He's seasoned in both fields, and it's a privilege to have him share his time and knowledge on the call today with us. So let's, with a round of applause, with all the emojis you can see and find on your keys, let's welcome Oluwaseyi Ajadi to ANST's training and to our security training course. So Shay, please confirm you can unmute. Let's confirm we can hear you also. You're very
Hi guys.
welcome. All right, hi, welcome. We can hear you. All right, great. It's great to have you. Over to you now. I know I've spent like 10 minutes of your time. I apologize.
It's fine. So yeah. Hi guys. In case you're wondering why I look this fresh, I genuinely don't dress this good on a normal day. I just came back from church. It's not that deep in life. My name is Oluwaseyi Ajadi, as they've said. And it's an honor to be here, to be honest. It's very rare for me to be in a position, or more correctly, times like this remind me of why I started being in the community. And that was to give back to the people, give back to tech. I believe that tech saved me at a point in my life that I was going through a dark part. And I love to give that back to other people. And so I feel very honored to have this opportunity to speak to you guys today. And I hope I do justice to that. So let me share my screen. So funny enough, and some of these slides might not work, but you understand soon enough. I hope you guys can see my screen.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
we can.
Okay.
Yes.
So a bit of a backstory. I don't know if can you guys still hear and see me properly?
Yes, we can.
Okay. When they told me about this training, I struggled. And I struggled for 3 reasons. First of all, it was the end of the year. And I was very tired. And I was like, I don't want to do this right now. As I pushed it to the next year. And then when they now told me and I finally agreed, my girlfriend reminded me that this is why I got into the community in the first place and I should take it. And I took it. I then struggled with what I would come and teach. I could come here and tell you guys about different security vulnerabilities and what they are. But something about that didn't sit right with me. something about giving you something you could probably just go and watch a YouTube video about didn't sit well with me particularly. And the answer came to me in church, which is why the slides look a bit old. I decided that I wasn't going to teach you, I wasn't going to come and just tell you what vulnerabilities are or how to find them. No, I was going to teach you the core concepts of security testing in and of itself. And in hopes that when you learn the core concepts, if you grasp it well enough, you just keep on running from there. And this is a combination of all my knowledge so far. I just had a mentorship session with my mentor, and it's sort of that plus the service today just led to this. And so hopefully I deliver a great session. So today we're going to be talking about the little things matter, how things work. And the key phrase is how things work here. Okay. So my name is Oluwaseyi Ajadi. I'm a quality assurance and penetration tester. What else do I do? I watch anime because I'm a cultured human being generally. I write when I'm not doing other stuff. And recently I started writing mobile code. I know someone about that is on the call. You people are suffering every day of your lives. I kid you not. Well, that's a bit about me. But before I get into the majority of today, let's tell a story. But let me ask a question. And this is the part where you guys can raise your hand. I'm going to do this for now. Okay, I think for the sake of this, let me just do this so I can be okay. That's perfect. So I can do slideshow here, and then I can just do this. Okay. Record this meeting locally. Sure. So the question is, who knows how a pendulum clock works? Feel free to raise up your hand, or yeah, it's an interactive session, so feel free to, if you want to drop it in the chat and you're shy, that's all right. Or you can raise up your, I don't know if they allowed people to raise up their hands. I'm sorry. Oh, I can see somebody raising up their hand. Charlie, Ruth, you can unmute and speak.
Okay. A pendulum clock swings back and forth like left, right, like so.
Okay. And do you know how it works? Like, how does it count the seconds? Does anybody know? Because of time, let's do a brief history lesson. So before we knew of quartz and then digital clocks, we had pendulum clocks. And pendulum clocks worked in a way that every swing was a second. And so the gears were calibrated in such a way that so every swing, it moved. It calculated in its brain that it was a second. So by the time it swings 60 times, the hand will move, and that's what it used to calibrate itself. So if you removed the pendulum from a pendulum clock, it would stop working. Most of them, at least the original ones. So let me tell you a story from that. A while ago, there was a task that was given to people. They said they had to stay in a room without they had no electronics, nothing. They just had to stay in the room for 24 hours. For fairness, what they did was they gave them a clock, a pendulum clock. They placed it inside the room, and the person had to, it was the time on that clock that will be used to tell when the 24 hours clicked. And so the person had to stay in the room and just stare at the clock. It was an empty room. The interesting thing is that staring at the clock made you more anxious. I don't know about you guys, but if you are staring at the clock and you're waiting for time to pass, that's when that's the slowest time will ever pass in your life. However, something interesting happened. One of the rules were very simple. You couldn't use any technology. You couldn't talk to anybody. You couldn't scream. You just had to look at the clock. And most importantly, once the clock in the room hits 12 o'clock, your 24 hours were up and you win. They were supposed to give them a cash prize. About 3 hours later, somebody shouted and they came into the room to disqualify him. And then he said, "No, I shouted because my 24 hours are up." And they were like, "No, 3 hours are passed." And they looked at the pendulum clock in his room and they saw that it was 12 on his pendulum clock. And everybody was like, "What's going on?" And backstory, he went to the pendulum clock and just started doing this. And so the seconds started counting faster. And so it started speeding up, and the clock's internal gear sort of spun out of control. Why am I telling you the story? It's a basic story, but it's sort of highlights what security testing is all about, how things work. At the end of the day, what I hope to show you is that at the end of the day, security testing is not that difficult. It's about finding the little things, what I call the little gaps. But for you to find the gaps, for you to find what is off, you need to know what is, which means in the long and short of things that you need to know how things work. Here are some basic concepts for security testing. If it is code and it is written by Samuel Abada, it can be hacked. Sorry. If it is code and it is written by man, it can be hacked. That's the first principle. The second principle is that any good developer will make it sufficiently difficult to hack if they know what they're doing. So the question is, how do you break code in and of itself? Well, to be honest, it's rather simple to hack. It's not difficult, but it is hard. And I'll explain. And I don't know if I'm mixing it. Can somebody clarify to me what's the difference between simple and difficult and hard and easy? Somebody once told me that difficult means that it is fundamentally difficult. And so it's a complex task. For example, something physics. I can't remember what I'm thinking about. But for example, traveling to space is difficult. But counting rice with your hands is not difficult to do because counting is a relatively simple task, but it is hard to do because of the sheer number of rice inside the sack. That's what somebody told me. I don't know if it's correct. But that's what I used here. It's rather simple to hack. And the reason being, it's not a very difficult thing to do. It's not so complex in and of itself, but it is hard. And why? Because the little things are what matter. You see, it boils down to how things work. And for you to be the beautiful hacker, or a security tester generally, you just have to know how things work. It means you spend most of your time figuring out how things work. About last week, earlier this year, something bad happened to me and my life went to pause, but I started getting back into it by last week. And I started learning things again. I started learning Web3, Google Cloud, and I'm preparing for one of my security certifications that I have postponed for the last 3 years. But the interesting thing was when I started looking at Google Cloud or Web3, the first thing that came to my mind was, let's learn how to build an app in Web3. The reason being, the first thing I needed to know was, how does Web3 work? And in roughly 2 days, because I've only watched the video for like 2-3 days, I could give you a very brief summary of Web3. I don't know how to write the code yet. Maybe meeting back in like 2 weeks, 3 weeks. But I could explain to you the fundamentals of Web3. And because I can explain to you the fundamentals of Web3, I'm fairly certain that after 3 weeks, I'll be able to hack a Web3 application. Don't quote me. The reason being, when we say the little things matter, over time, there are small things that make it easy for you to test something securely or to hack something in code. It genuinely boils down to three things: understanding, expectation, and maneuverability. And those are big words, but today we're going to focus on the little things. And what does that mean? You have to learn how something works and find the little gaps that are easy to tweak. Understanding is the first step, which is whatever you want to hack, be it a web application, a mobile application, IoT, even a process. You have to understand fundamentally how it works. You have to understand the rules that it runs by. You have to understand the basics of it. For example, when I say don't okay, when we're in a room, we're in a particular room. So in my office, we have 4 floors. On the second floor, they came to us and they said, don't eat in the office. There's a space, there's a canteen. Please don't eat in the office because when you eat in this workspace, it smells and it affects people. When I hear that, the first thing that comes to my mind is, what are the rules? Don't eat in this workspace. The reason being, people work here and it would make the place smell. How did my brain interpret it? Don't eat in places that people work because it will smell. And any other place, as long as people are not working there, is liable for me to eat in. Is that what they said? No. But is that what my brain interpreted it as? Yes. And that explains the difference between the rules that were given and what can be done. And so if I went and ate, for example, in a free room I would not start using, somebody would see me and say, why are you doing this? They told us not to eat. But I could easily defend myself and say, they said don't eat where people are working. It's those little gaps in the things that work. But for you to find those little things, you have to understand how things should work. When you understand how things should work, it will build your expectation about the thing. And when you understand and you now have expectations, you can now maneuver those little things. And we'll give examples. So, who knows about IDs generally? Can somebody explain to me what IDs are? Raise your hand. Can you explain to me how IDs work?
We can raise our
Okay.
hands if you want to speak. You can unmute. There's no one who's. I've not muted everyone, so you can unmute. You can speak. All right, Olashupo, you can go ahead.
All right, thank you very much. So for me, my understanding of the ID, please confirm you can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right, so my understanding of the ID is that it is used to give specific identification to certain HTML tags in web development. So it makes them unique, different from, let's say, child of a certain element that are they are compound together to work in certain section of the website.
This is the first time I've asked somebody to explain IDs and they explained it as a front-end developer. I'm so amazed. This is the first time I've asked somebody about IDs and they explained it from the concept of identifiers in like IDs when you're talking about HTML. It's such a unique explanation. Please, someone give me a round of applause. I'm so amazed. I genuinely think about IDs from the aspect of backend usually. That I forget that IDs are also a concept on the front end. Today we're going to be talking about IDs from the back end, but that was actually a very good answer about what IDs are, and I should probably be more specific as I go on now. um, yes, like you said, IDs are unique, and it works the same way on the back end. For you to identify a singular entity on the back end, whether it be a business, a person, or an object, a thing, an animal, place, or thing, you have to use an ID. It helps the database know what an entity is and the other information attached to the entity. So, for example, ID1, which represents myself, has two cows, two. His name is Oluwase Ajadi. He lives somewhere and he has a girlfriend. Anytime you want to get information about Oluwase Ajadi, you just have to ask the database, hi, give me all the information you have about ID1. That's how IDs work. And the general expectation or understanding about web apps is that if you see anywhere on a web app that usually has slash a number, so usually if you play around web apps a lot, you see profile/1 or profile/2. The expectation 90% of the time, if you understand what an ID is, like I just explained, is that /profile means you want to get the profile of somebody, and /1 means this is the ID of the person that you want to get the profile of. The expectation is that this /profile/1, if I change that 1 to 2, what is going to happen? So if I saw /profile/1 and I change it to /2, would the database give me the information for /2, even though I'm not meant to see it? And that's the basics of what we call IDOs. We have a security vulnerability called insecure direct object reference, and it means that you get permissions to things that you're not meant to see. So, for example, the information of another user, because it was referenced by an ID or a path. So in this case, it was referenced by 1. Since I want to see the result of somebody else to be referenced by 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, the next person and the next person. So usually, in security testing, when we see a number, the first thing that comes to our mind is, oh, why don't we maneuver it a bit? What happens if I change it to 2? What happens if I change it to 3? The second aspect of it is that you might see what we call a UUID, a maxed UUID. And what that is a universal unique ID. I can't remember. I'm not a backend developer, forgive me. But it's a way longer string, and it's mixed up of random characters. So you probably see a UUID like AQDE-1A2- this. And so when we want to test IDOs and we see a UUID, what we usually do is we'll create 2 accounts, carry the ID from one and paste it into the cookies of the next one to see if I can still access the record of the other person. It makes it substantially harder because it then means that I somehow have to guess the ID of the other person, but it's still a vulnerability in itself. So if you understood that, you now understand, we understood how ID works. Because of that, we had an expectation of how it should work. And because of that, we maneuvered the way it was supposed to work. Now, the next set of slides will be me explaining that concept for other vulnerabilities. But before we go there, any questions? Yeah, IDO, insecure direct object reference. Before we get into how different understandings, expectations, and maneuverability, any questions on what I've said so far? Is it that I'm just that good a teacher, or people are not listening?
We're listening. Maybe we haven't gotten to the hard part yet. Well, correct me if I'm wrong, guys.
You can just thumbs up if you understand so far. Oh, Olawale,
Actually, what I want to ask is that from the selector, we say something about selector. Is it when you're talking about from a software testing point now? In what we learned something yesterday about automation. I don't know where you are there. Are you listening to me, sir?
yes, I can hear you.
So they say something about element selector. Is it the kind of this ID you are talking about to identify a particular part or ID, or is that what you are trying to revert to?
No, so that's what I was explaining earlier. IDs mean two different things in the front end world and in the back end world. The front end world was the one that
Okay.
the guy that spoke explained, which is the one they taught you during automation. It allows the front end
Okay.
recognize certain blocks of code, basically. So it can be a paragraph, it can be a bold, it can be a class, but an ID is given to certain, let's just call it blocks of code, for it to recognize that these are this set of blocks of code. So, for example, um, I want to know the block of code responsible for showing a cart item. So I say ID cart item. And therefore, if I make a change on one place, it changes for every cart item. And it also means that I can go to, when I'm looking on automation, I can immediately go to ID cart item. That's front end.
Exactly. Okay.
And that's used for you when you're doing front end automation. The second half of ID is the back end. And this is majorly with APIs or monolithic applications. And that side of things is an ID represents, like I said, a unique identifier in the database. It tells the application what an entity is and the information with an entity. So, for example, when I register an application, I'm an entity, but it doesn't save it as Oluwase Ajadi because there can be an Oluwase Ajadi. It assigns me an ID, a number usually. So I can be number one. Number one. But anytime it wants to find me again, it knows to look for number one. And then the next time Timilehin Ogun comes, it knows it as number two, number three. And so anytime you want to prod for the information of Shay, you ask the DB to give you information on number one. And when you want to ask for Timilehin Ogun, you ask the DB to give you information on number two. Do you understand the difference between both of them now?
Thank you so much. Yes.
So from that, you now understand what I explained before about understanding maneuverability and expectability regarding IDs, or do you want to take that part again?
Let's continue, sir. I know we're gonna get around it.
Okay. But explaining it
Never mind.
shortly, it is that because you know that the DB stored Shay as one, the question is whenever you're going on a site, so if I go to a site and I see, for example, open, you guys can see my screen now. If I see scanfrost, acanfrost.com/profile/1. I could probably just go to vulnerable sites, but that's a different question. It means that that's the easier way. Okay. By the grace of God, by the grace of God, by the grace of God. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. Work for me. Okay. So let's see if this works or not. So if I check view transcript, so you see, let's copy that link. Control Shift, sorry, inspect. No, I can't copy the link. Sources, network. Okay, so I copy this, copy URL. Can we all see this URL? Just thumbs up, I guess. I actually can't see if you guys are thumbs up. But could you guys see the
Yes.
URL?
Yes, we can.
Now, this URL says 4.txt. We talked about how IDs represent an entity. Now, if I was to prod, the first thing I'll do is when I see a number, the first thing I'm checking is if I go to 1, for example, what would I see? Oh, oddly enough, 1 works. What's in 1? I see a chat conversation between two random people. Who are they? Yeah, let's close that. Hi Hal, I think I forgot my password, blah blah blah. Okay, so my password is this. Now, what happened there? The understanding is that IDs represent an entity. If you see an ID, if you see a /1, a slash anything, change that 1 to 2. That's what you expect. Because if 1 represents somebody, that means 2 must represent somebody, or 0 must represent somebody. So we can maneuver that 1 and say, okay, let's change it to 0 and see what happens. What happened is we saw 4, we said, let's take it to 1. We downloaded a text file of somebody chatting about their password. Does that sort of paint the picture for you guys? Can I get a thumbs up? Okay, thank you. Probably way beyond time at this point, but let's push from here. So that's IDs. The second concept is sanitization, and it sort of gives us the entire concept of injection vulnerabilities. And what's injection vulnerabilities? Injection vulnerabilities is born from the understanding that at the end of the day, everything is code. And so we spoke about, or somebody spoke about how on the front end we have IDs, and if you remember, on the front end you have tags. So we have P, we have H1, we have H2, like that, so on and so forth. The understanding behind injection vulnerability is that if websites are built with code, and whenever I put in my name, so if a website asks me for my name and it says, hi, Shay. Oh, sorry, what's your name? And I said, Shay. And then the next page, it says, hi, Shay. It only makes sense that if I put code back into the website, there's a possibility that it would render that code. And what does that mean? The only difference between normal text and code is the tags. The browser only understands that whenever you put a tag in front of something, it understands that that becomes HTML code, and it renders it in whatever way it can based on that. And so when you, and I hope there's an easy one here. When you see input fields in general, that asks you for what's going on? Oh, that's strange. What's with the when you see input fields in general, and input fields is anything that takes in information from you. The first question you want to ask yourself is: if I put in any sort of code into this place, what would that look like? And a good example is, hopefully this works too. What happened to my internet there? Mhm. So can you guys still hear me?
Yes, we can still hear you. Your slide was running. Yeah, we can see
Yeah,
the screen and we can hear
I
you.
think my internet. Okay, beautiful. Um, okay, so hopefully it's here. I bet I don't have time to be exploring. So now, what's an input box? An input box is anything that takes in information. This is an input box. 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 And so, because I know that at the end of the day, everything on this page is technically code. This is a section. This is a div. The question is, if I put that same code back into an input box, is there a possibility for any reason that it would render that code? And so the most popular code that you would see is what we call the alert script. And what's that? In HTML, JavaScript ish, you can run HTML in JavaScript. And so if you did this, I'm hoping. This is me hoping I still know how to write HTML one bit. It means that if I did this and I submitted it for any reason, would it show? So let's try. Yoda. So it didn't show. It showed, but it didn't run it. But for any reason, if I went back to the beginning and I tried to search, a search is also an input box in and of itself. So it asks me for something. If I paste the exact same thing back, what happens? Now, it says the website said one. What does that mean? It means the website ran the code. And how do I explain that? What I said was JavaScript say one, basically. And because the website ran the code, it wanted to say, for example, if I said SAT, it wanted to say set result for SAT. And if I came here to where SAT was, you can see that it put SAT here, which means that if I played around a bit and I said H1 R H2, sorry, closing H1, all things being equal, you can see the H1 tags that I put. But H1 is not specular again. Okay, bold. Someone should give me fancy HTML tags. You can just talk because I definitely can't see it if you're talking. Gosh, I'm hoping slash I is italics in HTML. If not, don't blame me. So, for example, I could make it bold because I put back that same code that it understands into it and it rendered it. And that means that if I put for any reason JavaScript through HTML, it understands it and then it prints it out. Do we all get the concept? I just need a thumbs up. So I understood that HTML basically is code. I expected that since this code, if I gave it back the same, if for any reason at any point, I gave it input and it showed the input back to me, what happens if I put code into it? Can I put? Okay. What happens if I put code into it? It said, and then what it said was, oh, okay, you gave me back code. I asked for something, you gave me back code. Here is the code I gave you, forgetting that the browser is going to run that code directly. So that's another example of understanding how it works and manipulating it. This is basically what we call injection vulnerabilities. You can put in HTML. If for some reason you're on a site that runs code, you can run malicious code. We call that code injection. If you're on a site that runs SQL, like it's running a database query, you can put in your own any input field whatsoever runs. Sometimes runs a database query. So you can put in a database command, an SQL command, and see if it runs it. Now, file handling generally. And the understanding of this is that if you've ever seen a site where it asks you to upload a file, and then you can view that file on the site, what happens is that for some sites, it runs that file on the server. And so when it runs that file, it knows what the file type is, and then it defaultly runs it. The problem with that is that sometimes, and when we're being malicious, sometimes you can manipulate what a file looks like. So, for example, you can put a PHP code can be masked as a JPEG. And how? Because most times the check that they use is that it ends with .jpeg. And for some reason, it will allow you to upload a file like a.php.jpg. Explaining this will be a bit difficult, but the point of it is that whenever you see a file, you should understand that when you upload it, it tries to run the file. If for any reason you can see the file that you just uploaded, it tries to run it. And so the next thing you should be thinking of is, can I upload a malicious file, which is a file that can run code on the system? That's the understanding between file handling. Now, password and cookies. And understanding passwords and cookies. Passwords is anything that secures, basically. The long and short of it is always check if the person has stupid passwords. And I'll explain why. I did a vulnerability assessment about a week ago or 2 weeks ago. And believe it or not, the company was boasting about their security. They were so sure about it. They said that they invited people from outside the country. The security is top notch, that we should take a crack at it. And then my CISO came and said, "Che, take a crack at this. Whatever you get, give it back to me." The first vulnerability I found was that the password for the super admin was password 1. And as simple as that is, imagine what would happen if your bank account password was password 1, and for some reason somebody just decided to try password 1. And the next thing you're getting is an alert that somebody has helped you buy Valentine gifts for your girlfriend. An iPhone X. It's just that it wasn't delivered to your girlfriend. Something as simple as weak passwords is frustrating. But then it now boils down to cookies. And why are cookies so special? It's very, very difficult to manipulate cookies in and of itself, and yet it's not so difficult. The reason cookies are so special is because they are a key that give you access to the kingdom. And it therefore means that for any reason, if your cookie should leave your laptop to somebody else's laptop, that person doesn't need to log in again. The person can do anything that you can do. And because your cookies are stored on the browser,
Hi, Shay.
It means that
Sorry to cut you off.
hi.
I just wanted to ask if you could explain. So the class is comprises of a mix, right? In most of the attendees are beginners. So you might need to explain like the key terms you're using. Cookies here is not a snack. Like you need to break
Yeah.
it down
Okay.
so everyone is following you. So going forward, if you could just like injection attacks, maybe I know you
Okay.
try to use the site to show, but break it granular because not everyone is on that level yet. I hope that helps.
Okay. I understand. And please, if I say anything you don't understand, just type in the chat so we can go over it and I'll answer. Cookies are what's the best? That's the basic way to explain it. They are keys to the kingdom. And let me explain how they work. When you log into a site, the site gives you a key, sort of. We call it a token. And what that token does is anytime you make a request, and in simple terms, the way your website works is you make a request. When you click a button, what it does is it basically goes to the server and says, "Hi, I need this." However, the server doesn't just give anybody information. You need a token to get information. So it's like an ID card. So it says, "Oh, you need this. Give me your ID card. Let me see that you're a student, and let me give you back this information." Now, it would be frustrating if every single time you wanted to perform an action, you had to log in over and over again. So what they did was they carried this token, which is your ID card, and stored it into what we call a cookie. It's not a physical thing. It's basically your browser. It's in your browser storage. It's basically just storing your token, and it's saying that anytime you make a request, send this token with alongside it, so that when it waves high and asks for something, it can identify that yes, you're a legitimate person. That's what a cookie is in and of itself. And a good explanation is because I logged into one of these sites. Oh, interesting. My laptop hanging. Can you guys still hear me? Okay.
Yes, we can.
So,
Yes.
an interesting explanation to that is if I came here and I inspected, or they show of that, if you came to application and this is your inspect, when you inspect, you come to the top, you click on this fast forward button basically, and you go to application. You'd see this list of things. You see cookies. And if I went to one of them, you'd see this bunch of things, and this just serves as tokens. The most special one is this session token, and it means that anytime it's sending a request, send this and let it know that hi, it's Shahida is talking. That's a cookie in and of itself. Does everybody understand? I just need thumbs up. Yes and no. um, a JWT itself is the token that is stored inside of the cookie. It's a type of token that uses a special type of encryption. So for example, in the case that I showed you, this would be the JWT token. But when you store it inside here, this becomes the cookie. I hope that explains it. Just give me a thumbs up if that explains it. So the token is different from the cookie. The token is stored inside the cookie. Giving a good example. Any other questions? What is the learning curve? Please, that's for after. That's for after. And so with cookies, the only sensitivity or the only thing that happens are two things. One, you don't want your cookies to leave your laptop. And if you remember when we talked about this, I know somebody asked about injection attacks. Yes, anytime you put in that code, If it runs the code for any reason, then it is susceptible to injection attacks. But it's not as simple as just alert one. Injection attacks can be so wide in the sense that I could write a script that tells it to send all your cookies to me, all the cookies for that particular site. Does it always work? No. If a developer adds a secure tag and an HTTP only tag, the tokens will not be copied, but that's not for you to know. The catch is, as you progress in your journey of security testing, you will soon learn how to send. You would write a script like this, and what it would say is, send these cookies. This is what it would say in English, but obviously that's not the code. It would say, send these cookies to this address. So you would set up a local server, and then it would send the person's cookies to that address. And what that means is that you'll be able to perform actions on behalf of the person. And that is as good as hacking them, because I can transfer your money, I can change your username and your password because it uses your cookies to do that. Any questions? Okay. Now, but this is too complex. Now, for requested. And if you ask why I'm skipping it, it's because of the thing I said in the beginning. There are certain things that I don't want to explain to you because there's no point in you having that information now. When you finish from here, what I want you to do is you now understand the concept of security testing in and of itself. It is, you learn about a thing so well and how it works that you understand how it's meant to work. And because you understand how it's meant to work, when you go on a site, you expect that to happen. And so then the next thing that comes into your mind is, because this happens, what is this little thing that I can tweak? Because I see an ID here and I know an ID represents an entity, can I change it? Because I see an input field here, can I put in code and see if it will run? Can I put in an SQL code? SQL code is database code that it's code that tells the server to bring out something from the database. That's the concept of SQL code, but you would learn that in your journey as it progresses. Can I put in that code? I'm thinking of the top vulnerabilities and their understanding curves. SQL, IDOS, XSS, CSRFs. Because I understand that, and this is more complex, which is why I didn't explain this type of ones. There's something we call cross-site request forgery. And what that means in sort of a sense is that because sites eventually started to work together, they did something where a site can request for information from another site. That's the basic explanation. And what that meant was that site A can ask site B for certain information, or site A can push you to site B to do something else. A good example is Twitter can push you to LinkedIn to make a post that you've already made in Twitter. The problem is if any site can do that, it now becomes dangerous because once it pushes you to that site, it automatically uses the cookies, which is the key, to make that request. Now, this is too much information for you. But the core of it is that because a site can ask another site to do something, if given the permission, it therefore means that you can technically write your own site to ask another site to do something. There are conditions for this, however. But again, don't disturb yourself about this. The majority of this talk was to explain to you that security testing in and of itself is about something simple. It's about you picking a field or picking a thing and understanding it so well enough that the little gaps and the little things that make it important become so clear to you, and then you can now manipulate those things. And so we're gonna play a little game. Hey, we talked about pendulum clocks very much earlier in this conversation. And so we're going to play a very little game. It's a riddle. And the riddle specializes in how your brain thinks about rules. I'm going to give you a simple rule and then I'll give you a hint. And you would explain to me, I want somebody to tell me how to manipulate that rule. The rule is at 12 o'clock every day, if your mobile phone did not make any financial transactions, give the person 1K. How would you go about getting the 1K multiple times in a day? Or more correctly, how would you go about exploiting the system to give you more than 1K in a day? Feel free to raise your hand. I can see somebody raising their hand, but I can't see who it is, so you can talk.
Keep changing the date to yesterday.
You're close, but think about it again. Why yesterday?
Like if it's like keep changing the date to today, it will keep being 12 o'clock. Just keep changing it. It will keep being 12 o'clock.
Correct. If I change the date on my mobile phone to 12 o'clock the next day, if for any reason the mobile application is using my phone's time to tell when to give me the money, it would look at the time and see that it's 12 o'clock and give me that money again. And I could keep on doing this. For any of you that played games around 2017, if you played, never 17, earlier than that, probably like 2019, if you played all these tower building games here, it would allow you purchase something or build a tower, but it would take a lot of time to build that tower. And what used to happen was that if you change the time on your phone, the tower game would sort of skip that time. So you could just stay and just change the time on your phone to like 12, and then 10 hours would have passed and you would have finished building what would have taken you actual 12 hours to build. Those are the little gaps you have to look for in security testing. So the steps are simple. Learn how things work. Learn it well. For those people that ask me, now I'm doing security testing, do I have to learn how to code? You don't. But it makes it better because you understand more thoroughly how things work. Learn how things work and then ask yourself, what gap did they forget to mention? What gap can I play with? What little thing can I play with? Is it an ID? Is it the way they are storing the files? Is it the way the application just processes information in general? Hacking doesn't have a defined bounds of what is a vulnerability anymore, because a process in and of itself can be a vulnerability. A good example of that was earlier 2020, what was that, 2022? We had a common vulnerability. If you clicked on forgot password, it would ask you for an email, your email, and then to send the mail to that email for you to forget your password. In one site, when we checked what was happening behind it when you inspect, and here's a rule of thumb for when you start doing security properly. The best place to find security vulnerabilities is to inspect, go to this fast forward button, go to network. And the reason I'm explaining this properly is because you would have to understand how APIs work. but we'll go to what you should learn. And then when you came here and you clicked on forgot password, what happened was that it had two fields. It had account to reset the password and mail to send the password to. So what it meant is I could put Code Farmer's account to reset and tell it to send the mail to my account. And that way I could reset the password of the account and Code Farmer will have no idea about it. And it's those little things. Understanding not just how tech works, how applications work, but even as far as how the application you're testing in the moment works. And then building up on that and finding those little gaps. So, a quote from Obines Sharma is that the little things lead to the big things. When you find this little thing here, this little thing here, this little thing here, before you realize it, you start becoming this person that, oh, this guy is a security guy, this guy is a hacker, and then in your head you're like, I don't really do much. Because at the end of the day, you forget that you just know so much about it that it becomes easier to break. And so the question is, what next? There are 4 steps. First step is learn. Learn like a thief. Get as much information about what you want to hack. If I was to give you the roadmap now, I would say learn how websites work. Learn a programming language, for instance. Learn how APIs work. Write your own API if you can. Learn how databases work. Learn how all of them come together. When you do that, then learn what security vulnerabilities are. The best place to learn that for web is Portswigger. And let me just drop the link while I'm in it. Portswigger has labs that you can practice that will teach you security vulnerability. And basically what it does is it just opens your eyes to the little gaps and then your brain will do the rest. Once you practice those labs well enough, your brain just starts finding these things once you go on a site. Once you go on a site, you understand how it works, and then the next thing you're asking is, what happens if I do this? What happens if I do this? It's a brainwave thing. And it sounds foreign, but the more you do it, the easier it becomes. And so my question is simple. Over the next 6 months, because you're just learning QA, don't rush it. Learn how applications work. Learn how APIs work. Learn how the backend works. Learn what backend is. Learn what programming language are. Learn how they interact with each other. If you can write code, write code. If you don't want it, fine. But learn how they work. Practice Portswigger labs diligently after you've learned that. And then start looking at websites and trying to understand them. Understand based on what you now know, expect, and then try to maneuver little things. And I bet that 2 to 3 years from now, 1 year from now, you'll probably have the opportunity to be giving this talk to the next generation. Thank you for your time. Any questions?
Thanks a lot, Shay. Yeah, there are a number of questions in the chat. A few questions have not been attended to.
I'm trying to look for it.
Yeah, so there was a question on the learning curve that you said you take later on from a
The what?
The question on what is the learning curve like for security or pen testing for a committed learner, and where can one get good resources? I think you've mentioned Portswigger, but you've not.
Portswigger, I've dropped the link for Portswigger. The other one is tryhackme.com. Beautiful place to get your fundamentals, even to figure out how things work generally. They have this thing called path, so just go to their path, and then you can learn about how things works generally. So kindly we share the link again for Portswigger. Copy first. What's the learning curve like? It's different for different people, and I'll explain. There's the learning curve and there's the earning curve. They're two very different things. The learning curve can be fast and it can be slow. And because when you enter hacking, because a lot of it is about finding out how things work, you can enter a loop of just always learning. An explanation of that is that I learned the first time I earned from hacking was 3 years after I started learning about it. I spent 1 year watching tutorials over and over again. If I had somebody to guide me, it would have been faster. I spent the second year learning how things work and basically playing through almost every tech or field of tech. And then I spent the third year actually doing Portswigger, try hack me. And then by my third year, I started playing with sites. And yeah, somebody saw me. I hacked into one or two companies. I got hired. And yeah, I'm here today. So the learning curve is different from different people. I have seen people that with guidance they started and in a year they were off and running. I've seen people that spent 5 years. I've seen people that started and stopped. It depends on how fast you learn things and it depends on how diligent and how committed you are. On average, it will probably take you with committed learning, and I mean committed, every single day you show up 6 to 1 year to be like a proper security tester where you don't you you have a concrete understanding of how systems work and you get very confident about your ability to manipulate them. That's not to say that you will hack every site. No, you just won't find some vulnerabilities in some, but you would have a confidence to start testing sites and finding vulnerabilities. Yeah, that's the learning curve. It's usually that way.
Yes.
Another question.
Yeah, can a little knowledge of system design assist in this?
Yes, it helps so much. In fact, when you start hacking properly, you sort of learn system design without learning system design because you understand systems and how they work so well that you now learn how to just build them out in your head. One of the things that make me stand out in my career, both as a QA and a system, as a security tester, is that you could literally talk to me about a system and I can sit down and the next 10 to 20 minutes, I would build out how that system will work and it would be very close to what a developer would do. In fact, it makes me so all over the place because I feel like I can do anything. I've built sites, I've built plugins just because I now understand system design so deeply. This weekend, I decided I was going to build a mobile app, and that started working. I'm not done, or we'll get there. But yeah, it would help. It go a long way because it would help you to understand how the system works, and then you can identify the gaps in it and how to break it.
All right, thanks, Shay. There's one more question here, but before I take the question, I would like to ask if we could have like a second version of this, maybe focus on top 10 OWASP top 10 vulnerabilities and how they can be spotted, like a more introductory or beginner focused class. Yeah, I know I'm I'm dragging you into another session, but
No, but
it's
funny,
best to have you on the call here. So 90 something people will know that I begged Shay to
funny, funny enough, the reason I shy away from it, it's not because I can't do it. I did it at Test First. I've done it in so many places. It's because when you explain to people vulnerabilities and how to spot them, it robs them of something. It robs them of truly understanding how that thing works and what brought about it in and of itself. And a lot of the people that I have done that to ended up having to relearn the vulnerability in and of itself. And that's why I hesitate about it. Because in the true sense of it, you could go to a track me, and literally type in OAuth software vulnerability and you will see labs about it. And even then, you see what they try to do is they just show you, they try to also explain it, but I can. All I need is, you know what? We'll leave it to the people. If you guys want me to do that, just thumbs up. If I see up to let's see a good number, 30 thumbs up, I'll do it. Wow, you really don't like me in this. Okay, 12, 17, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. Fair enough, fair enough, fair enough, fair enough. Sure, we can organize it to them.
All right, great. Thanks a lot, Oluwaseyi. We have two more questions. I'll quickly take them. Do you currently use any tools for penetration testing? If yes, can you share the tools? And second quick question, so you just answer them together. Is there a difference between a cybersecurity engineer and a QA security tester? QA security.
Oh,
That's how it's asked.
oh. The first question, the
First
answer to the first
question
question.
was tools for
No,
penetration testing.
I remember. It's difficult to answer that question because the more you go into it, the more you realize is there's not really any tool per se. You just figure things out because 90% of the time, what you'll be using is your browser, your inspect, and your network. 90% of the time. But the other set of tools that we usually talk about is Bobsuit, because what Bobsuit does is it allows you to look at requests as they're coming in. And we'll talk about this a lot more during the next session. The second tool will be OAuth Zap, and OAuth Zap and Bobsuit do exactly the same thing. Then the rest is on need-to-need basis. There's Nmap. As for network, the problem about cybersecurity is that it's so security testing that it's so big and it's so need basis. What you would use to test a website is different from what you'd use to test a mobile app, and it's also very different from what you would use to test a Web3 application. And so I could list a bunch of tools, and it wouldn't help you in any way whatsoever. What would help you is finding out how they work, and then when you find out how they work, in that process, you just learn the tools that you need. But the major ones are Bobsuit, OAuth Zap, and your browser for web, at the very least. Yeah. Is there a difference between a cybersecurity engineer and a QA security tester? I'm guessing because you see QA security tester anytime. So I usually struggle because of this. I don't want to be known as a quality assurance person alone because I do enjoy hacking. And so I do take a lot of contract penetration testing jobs. So what I usually say is QA and security tester, not QA security tester. There was a time I used to say QA security tester. Then I realized that wording in itself is confusing. But what's the difference between the two of them? A cybersecurity engineer is a very broad word because cybersecurity in and of itself is very broad. We have penetration testing. We have SOC, which is security operation centers. We have red teaming. We have the GRC, which is global regulations and compliance. We have log monitoring, which is done also by SOCs. There's so many fields and branches of cybersecurity. We have malware analysis. There's a whole bunch of them that go outside of testing in and of itself even. And so when somebody calls themselves a cybersecurity engineer, they can be in any one of these things. But when you say you're a security tester, more correctly, a penetration tester, what it means is that you specifically try and test the security of applications and break them and hack into them. You are specialized in breaking applications and testing them and finding vulnerabilities in them. That is your specialty. That's the difference between both of them. Any other questions?
Yeah, I think that's mostly it on questions. I don't know if anyone wants to unmute to ask any further questions. Just also
Shoot, so
check Somi, Favor, and everyone else who asked questions. Have your questions been answered? And are you fine
shoot.
with answers?
Ask your questions now before you know. When I enter the DM, I'll just tell them that I'm not doing the next class. I'll run.
Yishay. All right. I'm guessing
Somebody raised their hand.
I'm guessing there are no more questions at this point. All right.
Somebody raising their hand. I don't know who it
Oh,
is.
okay, okay. Olawale, please go on. Sorry, I didn't see the hand.
All right, thank you. Thank you for the insight. This is really, really great. I wanted to ask, you mentioned something like monolithic. Can you please put emphasis on that?
I mentioned
Thank
something
you.
like,
Monolithic. It's a monolithic
oh,
application. Yeah.
funny enough, I'm going to learn something that I just learned this year. Or was it last year? Last year. You will not see them again as popular. But apparently, in ages past, there was a time when there wasn't really a separation between front end and back end, which is what you see and what processes the logic. They were one and the same. And so a good way to explain it was that everything was just jumbled up together. And so when you made a request, it just kept on returning to you the HTML. I don't I don't know the best way to explain this. It basically means that both the front end and the back end are together. There's no separation. The way the normal applications work is that there is what we call the back end, which is the 90% of the time the API. And what the API does is that you ask it for information, it sends you back information. Let me see. Can I find a good website that actually sends proper JSON? Um, um, uh, uh, let's see. Okay, inspect. So, network. Let's see if this is. So, let's see if it's correct. Okay, yes. This is what the average API sends you. It sends you this, which we call JSON. It's an object. It's just information. What happens, however, is that when it sends this back, the HTML grabs that and then displays it into something that you can understand. For example, the JSON says 93, but it looks like this, which is the HTML took it and made it into this. And it's also the HTML that puts A here. It also says 376. That was probably somewhere here, I don't know. But that's what the basic application looks like. However, that rather than send you just the JSON, it would send you, and I hope this works. Yes, it would send you the entire HTML. Did it work? No, it didn't. What it would do is that rather than sending you the JSON and letting the front end process it, it would send you the entire HTML and everything just like that. And it will now render that sort of. So the HTML wasn't on the front and then processing what the back sends to it. Everything was one together and it just sent the HTML and then you saw it. That's the best way I can explain it. I literally just learned of it last year when my CTO said you guys can can build a monolithic app. My security focus was on web apps. Can you give key areas to look out for a mobile application? I'm confused. Uh, Are you guys looking to fly? um, Mobile applications are a very different ball game because um, they work fundamentally different from how web works. But you know what? Let's do something. You know what? I'm going to base this on somebody. He's not here again. Jesus is Lord. You know what? Pressure Udeme to get Code Farmer and myself to do a class on mobile apps after the web app. Yes, that's what you do. The reason why we don't talk about mobile apps in things like this is because it works fundamentally different, and it's, to be honest, a lot more difficult than web security testing. In fact, 90% of the time in mobile testing, what we try to do is to find the APIs that are being called and test that rather than testing the mobile app in and of itself. Yeah, that's basically what we try and do. But if them it's on them, tell her that if she can get Code Farmer to up on a class with me, we'll do a class on mobile security testing. Since people have said you want to learn what vulnerability is, you don't want to go and read it. But yeah, any more questions? Who is responsible if there's a penetration attack on the system, the dev or the QA? Ha. Gbogbo yín, na collab. To be honest, it depends on the organization. If there is a security person and it's the security person's responsibility, because why didn't they find it first? If it's an organization where the QA is also the security tester, then it's the QA. But more importantly, the first person they'll ask is the person responsible for upholding security. And so if you were just a normal QA, not a security tester, they won't blame you, because there's no reason why a QA should be protecting the security. It means they will blame the developer. But everybody will chop blow for that one, to be honest, because there's no 90% of most of the fault goes to the developer, but depending on the agreement, if the security is separated from QA team, it then means that the QA team will be responsible for not finding it first. Yeah, that's the best explanation.
All right. Thanks a lot, Shay. As I've made a special request, you have made a special request back. Thanks, thanks a lot, everyone, for joining today's class. I know to some of the trainees is a bit high level, and I apologize for that. I promise that we would have a beginner friendly class soon. Maybe not immediately now because your calendar's already booked, but we'll work something out. And also for the CQ, because Oluwaseyi has made it obvious that we're going to have we're going to have a what they call series on on penetration testing. So for the mobile focused one, we'll provide updates as soon as I'm able to work something out with all stakeholders concerning that. So once again, thank you all for joining in. I've dropped his LinkedIn handle. You can connect with him. You can bombard him with questions. Scratch that. You can say hi to him. Well, thanks again, Oluwaseyi, and we hope this is the first of many other classes and knowledge sharing sessions you'll have. Thanks for having ANST. Thanks for gracing our invitation. And thanks to everyone who has joined the call. We'll communicate further or future trainings in this series of security testing once I get more specific details and information. So thanks again for joining. Do have a lovely weekend.
Yeah. Hope I did well, guys. I'm sorry I didn't come and tell you guys about vulnerabilities. It didn't sit well with me. But no problem. We'll have another class for it.
It's fine. It's fine. Thanks again. You guys can unmute to speak. Oh, so quiet.
Thank you, Udeme. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Shi. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shi. Deme.
You're welcome.
Thank
I
you so
am
much.
All right.
on.
Enjoy the rest of your weekend, guys. Thank you.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Udeme, quick one. Are we still having the Python assessment today?
It has already been dropped in the channel, your Python Slack channel. Your assessment has been dropped there. I'm guessing you are.
About that,
Let me stop recording.
sorry about that. I'm sorry. I'm not